Toss aside the touchy-feely notions of love in business and recognize the real power it holds. Welcome to the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast with host Steve Farber. Drawing on his work with a wide variety of companies from the Fortune 100 to smaller family-owned businesses, Farber shares inspiring interviews with business leaders and proven strategies for how you can create experiences that your customers will love by developing a culture that your employees, teammates, and colleagues love working in. Discover why and how love, at the end of the day, is just damn good business for you too. Here's your host, Steve Farber.
Hi, this is Steve Farber, and welcome to episode number 16 of the Love is Just Damn Good Business podcast. Today, my guest is the legendary Jack Canfield. Now, you may know him by name, as many people do, but chances are, maybe the name doesn't sound so familiar. Well, how about the title Chicken Soup for the Soul? Everybody knows that. Jack Canfield is the co-author of Chicken Soup for the Soul, and way beyond that, he is one of the most prominent personal development luminaries, which is not a word I use lightly, on the planet, and also a friend of mine. He's the founder of the Transformational Leadership Council, of which I am a member. That's where I got to know Jack, and he's really quite extraordinary. So I asked him to come on the podcast and share his wisdom with us. We recorded this at a time, right in the throes of the coronavirus, social or physical distancing phenomenon. And a lot of our conversation, you'll see, really focuses in on these particular times, but they're principles that, of course, are true for any and all times. So he's the founder of Chicken Soup for the Soul publishing empire, which is worth, God knows how much. He's written multiple New York Times bestsellers, including The Success Principles, The Power of Focus, The Aladdin Factor, Dare to Win, The Key to Living the Law of Attraction, Living the Success Principles, Coaching, Breakthrough Success, and his new book is a workbook for the Success Principles, which is really quite extraordinary. He has 2.5 million subscribers and followers on social media. He has sold more than 500 million books worldwide. He's been a guest on over 1,000 TV and radio shows. He's trained almost 3,000 Canfield Success Principle trainers in 107 countries. He's been inducted into the National Speakers Association Speakers Hall of Fame. And way back when, he graduated Harvard with a master's degree in psychological education. And above and beyond all that, he is just an extraordinary, lovely, genuine, authentic human being. So listen on in to my conversation with Jack Canfield. Enjoy. Hey, Jack, thanks so much for being with me here today. It's really great to see you.
My pleasure, Steve. Thanks for having me.
Oh, man, so much to talk about with you. We're recording this in very interesting times when, a lot of us are under quarantine. Virtually everybody is on, I love these new terminologies. We're sheltering in place.
Yes.
Which sounds so kind of idyllic in some strange way. So I'd love our conversation to address that, but also not be totally bound by that. I do think that, obviously the circumstances that we live in right now will not last forever.
True.
And I don't think that's just because I'm a perpetual optimist. But these things are, they're limited in time. They just feels eternal when we're in the middle of it. And I suspect that the times that we live in are going to be kind of like a magnifying glass to really enlarge certain principles that are true in all circumstances. It's just that today is bringing it into sharper relief. Does that make sense?
No, it's true. It's true. We're all like sequestered in our homes and can't travel. But what it's doing, it's making us look at our lives in a much more intense way than we normally do. We're looking at family. We're looking at, are we working too much? Are we getting enough sleep? Are we meditating enough? Are we exercising enough? Are we eating properly? All of a sudden, when there's this crisis, this pandemic, everyone's going like, well, what do I need to do to survive? What do I need to do to thrive? And we should be asking that question all the time. What do I need? What do I need to be eating? Am I getting enough sleep? Am I serving my clients enough? What can I do that's innovative and creative? Because so many of us are realizing business as usual can't go on. And it's not just in our businesses, because we're having to be online and do more of these kind of things that we're doing right now, but also the whole world. There's a lot of people whose needs aren't getting met, and that's being highlighted. Our lack of preparation, for example, in our medical system, the fact that we're not able to serve all the people that need to be served right now, the supply lines that are so fragile, so much of our material coming from China and India and so forth, and realizing that when those supply lines are cut down, everything kind of stops. People don't have the things they need to manufacture. We don't have the pharmaceuticals, which we realize so many of them are being made in China and so forth. So there's a lot of emphasis on, well, should we be eating more locally? Should we be doing more local businesses? We should be focusing more on community than we are. Who are the leaders? I think all of us, like you and myself, are being asked to stand up and be facilitators of calm, facilitators of innovation, help people be creative, not freak out, not panic, and to really take this time, which we don't always have. You always hear people like, Michael Gerber, the myth guy, saying you got to work on your business, not just in your business.
Yeah.
A lot of people right now can't fully work in their business. So it's a good time to work on your business, to work on yourself.
Yeah.
One of the things
Or to work in your business in a completely different way.
Yeah, but when you're working in it in a different way, you're really working on it in a new way to make sure that it's more functional, more responsive to the needs of the time, the fact that everyone's at home, the fact that people are cocooning, that they're bored out of their gourds, many of them, that they're not able to focus the way they normally do. A lot of people are realizing, hey, I need to be online more. I need to be teaching more. I need to be serving in a different way rather than just always trying to make money from people. We can talk about this at great length, but one of the things that leaders and business owners are being forced to do right now is to say, okay, I may not be able to make as much money right this second as I was making 2 weeks ago. Some people are actually making more. I know people that they're 30% up this year over year this month because of the fact that they have courses online, or they have things they can deliver. A lot of MLM, marketing are doing
network marketing, multi-level marketing, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Like I do consulting for a company that sells essential oils and home cleaning products. They're cleaning up right now, literally,
so to speak.
I was just going to say it. It wasn't an intentional pun, but for many of us, if we're not able to do that, we need to be reaching out to people, letting them know we care, and serving them in some way that we can, so that when this is over, we hit the road running and people go, oh, these are the guys that cared about me when things hit the fan. I'm going to be a loyal customer for them, because they care. They're not just in it for the money.
Right.
I think there's a lot of options, a lot of opportunity here for innovation and growth, and building our mailing list, building our client base, building greater customer loyalty, and so forth.
Yeah, and it also brings into sharp relief that in times that are characterized for many people, if not most people, by fear, that love takes an even more prominent place in the front seat. I mean, it always takes a place in the front seat, but again, these times, when people are feeling isolated and uncertain, to have anybody else reach out with an open heart, just because I want to help, not because, hey, if I culture this relationship now, it's really going to pay off for me in the future. That may be true, but if the motive is really, I'm reaching out because I want to be there to support you, regardless of whether we do business in the future, people respond to that in a deeper way. That's obviously it's authenticity. Yeah. As long as it's authentic.
One of the more successful people in our world of training and personal development is Deepak Chopra. Deepak Chopra says his morning prayer every morning is to ask God, he says, show me how I can be of more service to more people. So more service to the people I'm already working with, and be of service to more people that I'm currently serving. If you do that constantly, if you're of service over and over and over, everything's going to take care of itself, because love comes back multiplied. It may not always come back in the form of money. may come back in the form of ideas, people supporting you, may come back in the form of all kinds of opportunities that open up to you that you have to then harvest. But I believe that whatever you put out comes back multiplied. And if you're coming from a space of love, people respond to that. I remember when I was buying a house for the first time in California, which was shocking because I just sold a house for $150,000 in Massachusetts. And it was 11 acres of land bordering a 2,100 acre forest, had 5 bedrooms. It was a huge house, 30 by 30 living room. And in California, a 1,750 square foot house was $525,000.
Oh my gosh.
Shocking. But when I finally had enough money for a down payment, I remember we went to about 15 open houses and signed all the books you sign when you go in. Only one person contacted us after that. And it was a woman. And she said, by the way, I saw you signed in, so you're obviously looking for a house. Obviously the one you looked at isn't what you needed, or you would have talked to me. Can I help you find your ideal house? And she really wanted to help us find the ideal house. We had good school for our kids. We ended up in a house right across from a school. Walked my 6-year-old across the block to the school. Never had to worry about anything. It was perfect for us. And but she did it out of caring for us, not out of like, I need to make a buck. And literally I bought 2 or 3 other properties with that same woman.
Yeah. It's interesting. What it makes me think of is, I think a lot of people look at love in the context of business, love and profit as in tension with each other, or maybe even mutually exclusive. I should either love you or I should profit from doing business with you. And it's really a both and scenario, that one is the way to the other, right? I mean, if I really reach out of love because I want to help, because I want to give value to you, because I want to help you solve your problem, I'm a business person. Of course, I ultimately want to make money as well. But it's the nuance is that's not the reason I'm doing this. It's the outcome for my doing this.
I think it's hard to separate the two. I mean, when I go to the store to buy food.
Exactly.
And, I have a need. At the same time, I'm thinking about what's going to be good for my family to eat, what's not going to be good to eat, and so on and so forth. I think they're kind of, I think love is the actual place that we're all supposed to come from, that when we do that, everything works. It's the essence of who we are. The sun just shines. It doesn't decide what's going to happen as a result of it. Is it doing good? Where are they growing stuff on Earth, but not on Mars? Whatever. It's just called the sun does what the sun does.
Right.
And one of my teachers once said, it doesn't look down on New Orleans and go, oh my God, you're all sinning down there. I'm not going to shine on you today. It just shines. And so when we do that, you always, when you meet someone that's coming from pure love, you meet a Mother Teresa, you meet a Dalai Lama, you meet certain people that are in the business world, and you just get, Tony Hsieh just wants to have a good time, love people. And in the process, money's going to be made selling shoes. Shoes is just an excuse to develop a company where everyone does good, has a good time.
Yeah.
The classic stories of Zappos, where there was one guy on a call with a woman once for 8 hours. It was a sales call. Most companies go, you got 4.5 minutes. If you can't make a sale on the phone,
Yeah.
And that's not true there. It's like, and the funny thing about that is here I am talking about it. So I'm giving them brand building just because they're a loving company.
Exactly. And, if I could be so presumptuous as to quote myself, it's just damn good business.
It's just damn good business.
It's just damn good business. So there's a couple of things that I've been thinking about in the context of the day. I'd love to get your take on, and I think it relates directly to the success principles. You'll tell me if it does or not. So it seems that these days of what I've been referring to as physical distancing, not social distancing.
Yes.
So because that's really what we're doing. We're finding it creates these interesting kind of paradoxes, right? There is the inner landscape that we're dealing with and the outer. So the inner is whatever's going on in my own internal environment, my own, optimism, pessimism, fear, anxiety, whatever it is, I have to manage that. As a leader, I have to manage that, not just for my own well-being, but because it's going to enhance my ability, the better I can I can harness that, make use of it, manage it, whatever terminology you want to use, the more capable I am to reach out and connect. So my inner landscape is going to affect my ability to connect with people, which is my job as a leader. Like you were talking about before, people are looking to leaders now to give them hope and encouragement. And we're able to do that to the degree that we actually have hope and we feel encouraged, right? So we're focused on the inner and the connection. And ironically, it's pretty obvious that the fact that we're physically separated is almost forcing us to figure out ways to connect more deeply. And we're connecting in ways that we haven't connected even when we weren't physically separated. So that's one dynamic I want to set up. And the other dynamic is the tension between now and later, between present and future. When we're in the midst of a crisis, whether it's one like we're all globally experiencing right now, or any challenge that comes up under so-called normal circumstances, we're managing that present. And yet, as leaders and as human beings in general, we're inspired by and drawn by the future. Not about accurately predicting the future, but the kind of future that we want to create. So the inner and the outer, the now and the later. And it seems to me that a lot of your principles and techniques that you've been teaching now for forever, since the time a house in California cost $200, these are techniques that are really going to help us in these times and beyond. So I just love to hear you speak to those ideas.
Well, I have a chapter in the Success Principles book. Now we have the Success Principles Workbook that's come out, after 15 years of the book. And the chapter on leadership said the first principle, there's 6 principles within it. The first one is know thyself as a leader. That if you're not aware of who you are and what you are, what your strengths are, what your weaknesses are, what your attitude is, what your vibrational level of joy and peace and harmony and so forth, then you can't really be that good of a leader. Because what people are looking for now, especially, is they're looking for stability. They're looking for steadiness. They're looking for hope. They're looking for someone who has a vision of a positive outcome. They're looking for someone that can help them maintain their calm, not get panicked and deal with their fear. I look at, Governor Cuomo in New York right now has emerged as a very vocal leader in this time for his own state, at least. He gets more time on television than anyone else right now because he's saying things that really need to be said. And he's got a vision of what's necessary in the future. He sees the wave of what's coming and so on and so forth. So I think that what we need to do is what you're saying. We have to be clear of who we are so that we can connect from an authentic, transparent place. And that we have to be managing our own, I call it vibration, our own emotional state. Are you in a state of fear? Or are you in a state of love? Love and fear are the opposite. Fear is the opposite of love, not hate. And so basically, I think when you do the work on yourself, the more you do it, the more you realize at the bottom of every piece of work is love. Everything I ever done, any meditation I've ever done, any exercise I've ever done, when I get to the bottom of what I really want, I want to love and be loved. If you look at it from a self-esteem perspective, we all want to love and be loved, and we want to feel competent, and we want the world to perceive us as competent and feel like we're worthy of being here, and then compensate us for our competence, which is called making a living. In terms of the present and the future, I think that it's a combination of mindfulness, being in the present moment, knowing clearly what is going on inside you first, And I've been recommending to people on a lot of these podcasts and calls and interviews I've been doing lately, take and set your cell phone, your smartphone, whatever it is, to 1 hour increments for the alarm to go off. And when it goes off, stop, take a deep breath, scan your body. How are you feeling? Maybe your legs are numb because you've been sitting there for 2 hours, kind of freaking out, figuring out what to do, or working on your internet, whatever. Stand up, stretch. Do a yoga posture, do some deep breathing, maybe walk around the office or around your house if you're able to do that. And then come back. And I think that then you're in touch with what's really going on, and be authentic. If you're feeling fear, acknowledge it. Don't try to press it down, but then analyze what's the source of my fear. It's always thoughts or images of the future that are negative. I won't be able to pay my rent. I'm going to lose my employees. I won't be able to, keep my car, whatever it might be. And realize that we will, as you said, you started this this program out with, literally, we will come out of this. We've always come out of everything. Everybody listening to this has survived everything that ever happened to them. Think about that. Everything that ever happened. Me, Vietnam War, the civil rights movement when I was a teacher in a black school. I was kidnapped once when I was in Mexico. On and on I could go of all the things, 3 recessions, whatever. So the reality is 9/11 is another one. We all survived that. We will survive this. The stock market has always come back. Jobs have always come back. People have always gotten back. Everything grows again, so forth and so on. It's not like, when the volcanoes happened and all life died out, we're not in the ice age, we're the opposite. We're heating up. That's a whole other story. But anyway, the point being that we can and will survive this. And we as leaders, whether it's of your company, a tribe, a group, your church group, whatever it might be, we need to be giving messages of hope and messages of positive intention. One of the other principles for a leader is you have to have a positive vision of the future, one that you know how to communicate through good storytelling and enrollment and humor and all of that, so that people actually believe, both heart and mind and soul, that the future will be better. I'm convinced that there's a deeper spiritual purpose for this whole thing. We are realizing we are one humanity at a level we've never realized before, that we're much more interconnected on every level than we've ever been before, and that we need to be more compassionate. For example, you have states that are saying, look, you cannot evict anyone for the next 3 months. We have banks that are saying you don't have to pay your mortgage payment for the next 3 months. We have the government saying you don't have to pay your taxes until July 15th. And I think landlords need to realize, don't be evicting anybody for the next 3 months. And banks, don't be taking your landlords who own apartment buildings and taking their, repossess. Everyone needs to be helping everyone else. Consider this as a pause button on your remote control. You pause it, the movie stops, we go around and we do things for a while, we come back, we've eaten our dinner, gone to the restroom, whatever, we come back and we start the movie again. If we all play from that perspective, we'll get through this. If people get greedy, if people get into fear and panic like they're doing in India right now, they're literally evicting doctors and nurses from their homes and apartments because they're afraid, the neighbors are afraid that if they come back from the hospital, they'll have the coronavirus on them and they'll infect everybody. They're beating people. People are supposed to be self-quarantining. And if someone's out, people are out there beating people with sticks to go back inside. So that's the kind of panic behavior that we're seeing. And so we as leaders have to remind people, like, calm down. What are the facts? We need to know the facts. What are the facts? How is this? How does it spread? What do we need to be doing? I think one of the things that most people don't realize, well, they do realize the statistics. Very few people actually die. Maybe it'll be as high as 4 or 8% of older people who have preconditions. The reality is all of us, you're my age and my age, we're going to survive. I'm healthy. You're healthy. We can eat better, stop eating sugar, stop drinking alcohol, exercise a little more, meditate. When you get into fear, your immune system goes down. Our good friend Dawson Church has this thing called echo meditation. Research shows if you do that meditation for 7 days in a row, your immunoglobulins in your blood and in your saliva goes up 113%. So
is that the one that he taught on that video that he just sent out not too long ago?
Yes, that's something we should all make available I've made it available to everyone on my mail.
I'll put a link on the page for this. Yeah.
It's about a 20-minute meditation. It's real simple. You just follow along. But if there's statistics that tell you it increases your immune system by 113%, we should all be doing that. We should be sharing these resources. We know that if you're taking in zinc and vitamin C, if you're keeping your diet alkaline, if you're taking things like oregano oil, there's all kind. Go online and just type in supplements for the coronavirus. There are polysaccharides that are in certain mushrooms that actually mute the connector cells on the coronavirus, so it can't connect to your lung cells. So there are things we know. Everyone needs to be self-educating, and people like you and I need to be sharing with people what are the things that they can be doing. There's a Chinese herb called yin chow. It's been used for flus for years, and the reason it is, again, it has these polysaccharides that help basically kill the virus.
So along those lines, maybe it's a little bit of a tangent, maybe not. But we all know that online is not in and of itself, because it's online, a credible source of information. We know that now
That's
more than ever. So how do we
true.
filter out what could truly be helpful and what is just, essentially made up out of whole cloth by some people?
Well, I think you have to look at the sources. If there's footnotes, I just listened to a Greg Braden interview last night. He was talking about these mushrooms, and he had all these sources or from medical journals, because he's a scientist, about polysaccharides and peptides and what they do. I have a doctor that's one of my students in New Orleans who's a virologist, and she was sending me things you can do. Like there's a product called Intramax 2.0, which is a 451 micronutrients and vitamins and herbs and all these things. You can get that on Amazon.com right now. It's not been overbought. So look at your sources. Are they the World Health Organization? We always have to be a little suspect. The pharmaceutical companies are always trying to make more money with pharmaceuticals, and they're putting down often things like holistic things. The Chinese were very successful in limiting the number of deaths because they were using traditional Chinese herbs along with modern medical techniques. And if you read a lot about that, so I think there are a lot of Chinese herbs that are effective. But again, I look for patterns. If 5 people I trust are saying the same thing, then I start to say, well, this would be good. Everyone's saying you should take C, 3,000 units a day. You start to see patterns, and that becomes what you want to look at.
Yeah, I'm hyper, I notice it for myself. I am hyper aware of my internal environment,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm hyper aware of my physiology.
Mm-hmm.
And so some of that's good and some of it's not, right? It's like, uh-oh, what was that? A little twinge? Whoa, what was that? Is it that, or is it just a twinge? And I'm noticing how that affects my frame of mind and how susceptible I am to hearing little bits of news that can kind of throw me off of my game, right? Because on the one hand, what we know is that just given the nature of a virus, things are going to get worse before they get better. But when I turn on the news and I hear there are this many deaths today, with that kind of tone of voice, it's like, well, yeah, didn't we say that was going to happen? So there's a lot of people pushing the fear button and the panic button, which I always try to translate then back into our role as leaders, right? So it's taking that in, it's not denying it, it's trying to make sense out of it, but then being there as a source of hope and encouragement for other people. And I think that's one of the things that really defines who you are, Jack, as a person, not only in your body of work, but also just the way you are. You're so, my perception is, and you and I have known each other for a few years through Transformational Leadership Council, but it's kind of funny. Usually I say, Transformational Leadership Council, that was a group started by Jack Canfield. I don't have to say that to you. You're Jack Canfield. So that thing that you started, where we got to know each other. And, so I've had the opportunity to see just kind of how you show up. And I think that's a great object lesson for all of us right now. And, when I look at, let's put this in the context of your body of work for a second. You've got the success principles, which have been out for quite some time. And now you have the success principles workbook, which as a student of the success principles, I was really thrilled when that book came out. The way that I read, and I'm still in the process of reading the success principles, is via audiobook while I'm stretching or exercising.
Uh-huh.
And there's so much great stuff in there, and it's already, it's gotten me to rethink how I think about my future and my goals. And a goal is kind of, it's that intersection between the present and the future, right? We're
Mm-hmm.
setting a goal depending on, or by virtue of where we are now, and then expressing it in a way in terms of what we want to create. So that's now and that's future.
Mm-hmm.
So it just strikes me that right now, given that really strong tension between getting through today and connecting with tomorrow, I'd love to hear a couple of just words of advice or maybe techniques or things to try, because here's my fear. When we're in a time of great challenge, the worst thing we could do is relinquish our desire for the future.
Right.
And for a lot of people, thinking about the future is the hardest thing to do. And it's the very thing that's going to give us hope. So one of the things that I've been suggesting to people is this is the time to get together with your team virtually and have the conversation. What do we want to create? When all this is over, how do we want our new world to look? New world as whatever the context is, as a company or as a project or as a team or as a family, whatever it is. And it's just really hard. I'll speak for myself. Sometimes, some days more than others, it's really hard for me to pull myself out of, holy shit, what am I going to do today and tomorrow with my business? And think about, wait a minute, all those plans that I have for the Extreme Leadership Institute, for example, they're not gone. We've hit a pause button in some sense, and it's given us the opportunity to rethink it in another sense. So how can we better do that and help other people to do that?
Well, I think it's a matter of spending some time, figure out how much time you want to spend every day in terms of creating the future you want to live. So that involves several things. Number one, you got to take 100% responsibility for your life. That's the first chapter in my book. It's the first set of exercises in the workbook. And the thing about the workbook is like a coach between two covers of a book. Because I realized a lot of people would read my book, but they wouldn't change their life. Now, some people did. I've had people read my book and say, I doubled my income, tripled my time off. One person said, I'm now a multimillionaire in 3 years because of your book. Before that, I was homeless. That's a pretty amazing story. But for most people, they read a book and they put it on their shelf, like you have the shelf behind you there, and they end up with what I call shelf-esteem. They don't really have a book that they've taken and actually done the work. And sort of like,
by the way, you do have very impressive shelf-esteem behind you there.
Yeah, I've read 3,000 books, so they're all around me. That's only one wall behind you. There's 4 of them. And a garage full of books as well. But that's neither here nor there. The more important thing is I've acted on. If you get one idea from a book and you use it, that's worth the whole book. Yeah. But what I've done with the Success Principles workbook is to say, look, there's 17 chapters. These are the most 17 core principles of success. If you just did this, you could radically change your life. Now, a lot of people are sequestered at home. We're looking at 2 weeks, 2 months, whatever it might be. If you were to do one chapter and do the exercise, give yourself an hour or two, and maybe every other day, in 34 days, you would have gone through the entire book and outlined your future, come up with a plan. You'd know exactly what you want. You'd have clarified your life purpose, your business purpose. You would have come up with affirmations and visualizations that you're doing every day. You would have established an accountability partner. It's like if you and I were accountability partners, we'd call each other every day. And I tell you, these are the 5 things I'm going to do to achieve my breakthrough goal. Everyone should come out of this period of time with something that when you hit the ground running is going to be a major breakthrough for you or your company. Could be in the area of finance, could be professionally, could be relationships, could be health, doesn't matter. But in order to achieve that, one of the things my mentor, W. Clement Stone, who was worth $600 million in the 1960s, what he told me was, do 5 things a day toward the achievement of your major goal. If you do that, by the end of the year, you've done 1,800 actions to achieve your goal. And so my accountability partner is the person that's going to hold me accountable to actually make sure I do that. And I couldn't call you day after day after day in the morning, let's say at 8 o'clock, or checking in and go, I didn't do that again. You go, come on, Canfield, are you willing to recommit or not? And eventually you'd be tired of hearing my excuses and I'd feel embarrassed to call you up. The government says pay your taxes by a certain date because they know if they don't, we'll never get around to it. And so we have to have some deadlines in our life of when we're going to do things. And then you've got to take the actions. You've got to ask for feedback. One of the things I teach is that you have to ask for feedback. So like in my relationship with my wife, I ask my wife, Inga, every Sunday night, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the quality of our relationship? Anything less than a 10 gets a follow-up question that would be, What would it take to make it a 10? I usually get an 8 or a 9, sometimes a 10. But one night I got a 4. And a 4. But I was not happy to hear that. I said, what would it take to make it a 10? And she said, number one, don't interrupt me when I'm telling a joke because you think you can tell it better. Now, it is true, I can, but I've learned that is not good for the relationship. Number two, she said, I want you to put the kids to bed. This was a while ago. So I want you to put the kids to bed without me asking you to do it. You know, I don't care if there's NBA playoffs going on, Monday Night Football. I get them up in the morning, get them ready for school. Your job is to put them to bed. And then the third thing she said was, have you ever heard of foreplay? I said, yeah. She said, you might want to revisit that concept. Now, did I like hearing that? No. Did I need to hear that for the quality of our relationship? Yes. Would most men never ask their wife that question? Yes. Would they not? Would they find out their wife's dissatisfied? Probably not. She just kind of withdraws, gets pouty, gets angry, whatever. But she's told her mother, her sister, the women at the nail salon, people at the checkout line at Starbucks, you know, whatever. The reality is I can't improve the quality of my relationship with my wife, with you as a friend, with my clients, with my staff, with my vendors, unless I ask for feedback. And so this is a good time to do something you've never done. Most people don't do that. I have friends right now that are calling all their clients because they can't be serving them because of the kind of thing they do. Maybe they run a hair salon or a spa. They can't be touching anybody. And saying, hey, I just wanted to check in. I've never really asked you on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate the quality of my massages, my esthetician facials, whatever it is? And just having a conversation, how's it going without the massages? You know, there's some things you can do, because I also used to study yoga. Here's some yoga things, or here's a good yoga course online you can go to, or here's a Beachbody program you might want to do. So the idea is that we have a lot of time to be studying, to be planning our future, to be developing some new tools and techniques, some new concepts, some new ways of being, some new systems, if you will, in our companies, as well as reaching out and getting feedback, things like that, spending more time with people. You know, how many times I don't know if you ever get this. You work from home. I work from home, but my office is separated. But I'm on the road sometimes for 3 weeks in a row. My wife's always going, I want more time with you. Well, guess what? We have that now.
It's the old be careful what you ask for.
There you go.
Scenario.
But I'm being called by everyone I know. In fact, I just got a call from Cynthia Kersey, who you know, saying, can you do a podcast with me this afternoon? My community's freaking out. And I'll do that. But my wife's going like, well, you're home now. How about at least can I have 2 hours a day? You know, so this is the time to spend with your kids.
Well, you'll talk about that on Sunday night, I'm sure.
Yeah, I'll hear about it. I'll hear about it. But, you know, exercise. There's so many things you can be doing. And in my book, each chapter is filled with worksheets and what we call make a habit. Like if things don't become habits, they don't really change your life. You know, I think it was Benjamin Franklin said, learning has not occurred until a behavior has changed. I think it's one of the most profound things I ever heard. You and I can spout all kinds of concepts from books, but if we're not applying that to our life, that's not really learning. Yeah. It's just head stuff, you know.
Yeah, for sure. You know, I started meditating when I was 13 years old. So I've been meditating the vast majority of my life and spent a lot of time in my younger days with my eyes closed. To the point where it felt liberating when I stopped meditating a number of years ago. Mm-hmm. It was almost like a reverse effect, because I was so devoted to it and so disciplined about it that I was literally doing this meditation program at one point for an hour and a half twice a day, and this was in my late 20s, early 30s by that point. And what I'm finding lately is, again, it's back to that managing the inner landscape sort of a thing, and also inspired in part by success principles, that I'm going back to that. Not as long, not an hour and a half twice a day, but back to twice a day of just that sitting and, in meditation. And I have, a certain way that I approach it. And there's so many different ways to meditate. And then using that as a platform to think about the future, mm-hmm. and not just think about the future in a in a, fantasy sort of a way, but to think intentionally
Yes.
about creating the future. And what I find is that it is so invigorating, and so it's both calming and invigorating at the same time, that it literally raises my feeling of resilience in the face of all the stress that's coming at us all day in our homes. So I think it's a very simple principle, and the principles that you teach are really simple. And I think easily, maybe because they're simple, I think they could be easily misunderstood. Like, for example, the whole idea of The Secret was very easily misunderstood. People, they just kind of interpreted that as, well, if you just sit around and think about what you want, then Aladdin will pop out of the lamp on your desk and grant you your every desire. Whereas we all know it takes a hell of a lot of work. It's the old, I think it was a Sufi saying, it said, in a sandstorm, trust in Allah, but tie your camel.
Exactly. It's a great quote. I've said that myself many times. I actually studied with the Sufis for a year, way back when I was in my 30s. But the point being that I lost my train of thought. That happens sometimes.
So it's a simple thing.
Oh, meditation. We're talking about meditation. Look, I used to meditate for 2 hours a day after I went to a Vipassana meditation retreat once, and that it became burdensome, and I stopped. And I teach something now called the Hour of Power, which is 20 minutes of meditation, 20 minutes of reading something uplifting or inspiring, or like your book, Love is Damn Good Business, and my books, whatever. And then also 20 minutes of intense exercise, like high intensity interval training or, aerobics or whatever. And if you do that, we all have an hour now because we're not commuting anywhere. And so basically you've got this hour. And I find 20 minutes of meditation. And what I do in my meditation now, to build on what you said, I think is survival. I end my meditation by asking a question. After I meditate, where it's just pure focus or pure breathing or pure focusing on light moving through my body or whatever the meditation technique is, I then pose myself a question that has to do either with my business, my future, or my life. So I might ask a question like, how can I be of greater service to my train-the-trainer graduates right now? And I really got an influx of energy and kind of intuitive information that was saying a lot of them are really scared because you've trained them how to lead live trainings. And all of a sudden now they can't do that. So they have to train online. They have to coach online, but I haven't really trained them how to do that. So I'm going to go out now and I'm going to do some webinars for them for free over the next couple of weeks, showing them how I do it, what they can do, how they can take some of our courses that they already have access to and walk their clients through that online and get paid for it. So if I hadn't asked that question, I wouldn't be thinking about them this morning. And so any question you ever have, like, how am I going to deal with this? How am I going to deal with that? There's something called the heart math breathing technique, the quick coherence. Anyone can do this. You just imagine breathing in through your heart and exhaling through your heart as you inhale for a count of 6 and exhale for a count of 6. And if you just do that for maybe 3 minutes and then ask yourself a question or a problem you have, how can I deal with this? Research that the Heart Math Institute has done, and I've done it with my own graduates where I've given them a problem. I've asked them, what problem do you have? I have them come up with all these solutions they can think of. We then do the quick coherence technique and breathing through the heart. And what happens, and then focusing on something you appreciate for just a minute. And then ask the question again. Everyone comes up with better answers because you're now tapped into your intuition, your higher self, to source energy, whatever you want to call it. So this is a good time. My mentor, W. Clement Stone, was worth $600 million. He was a good friend of Napoleon Hill. He hired a guy, and I only found this out about a year after I was working at the Stone Foundation. There was some guy on the 6th floor. We rarely ever saw him. We heard about him. Every once in a while, you'd see him in the cafeteria. He was by himself. He never talked to anybody. He was very introverted. And one day I found out what he was. Whenever Stone would have a problem, Stone owned several companies. He owned a publishing company. He owned an insurance company. He owned a real estate development company. And when he would come up against a problem, he would call this guy on the 6th floor and he would say, here's my problem. I want you to come up with a solution. This guy would sit in his room, turn the lights off, go into meditation. He might meditate for a day or two or three, and he would come up with some phenomenal solution that would save Stone or make Stone hundreds of thousands, if not millions of dollars. And this guy was getting paid like $50,000 a year when we were all getting like maybe 10 or 15,000 a year, which back then was good money, 68, 70. And we thought, how is that guy getting paid? What does he do? Nobody knew. Well, what he did, he thought, but he thought at a higher level because he was meditating and asking a higher power, if you will, to come up with a solution. Stone was so clear that that was the way to work. He hired a guy just to do that for him.
Whereas he could have done it himself, but I'm sure one of the keys to being as successful as he was delegation.
He did do meditation. I used to say he was a reincarnated Tibetan monk in a Republican body. Very interesting experience. But he was very wise and he meditated. He used to read a biography a week of somebody famous, always inspiring himself to think a higher level of thoughts. He was quite extraordinary. But I
just want to just stop and capture that for a moment, so people can get it, because it's a very simple technique. And in a time of turmoil, we find ourselves very much looking for answers out there, which is, I guess, kind of natural for us, right? We look to the news, we look to our politicians, we look to leaders, we look to friends and families and saying, what's the solution to this? What you're suggesting is that while that might have its value, we also have a tremendous value of being able to ask and answer our own questions. And this is a great time to practice that, because we have the time to practice that. Right. So again, let me feed it back to you and tell me if I have it right. Focus on the heart, breathe in through the heart. You're visualizing yourself breathing in through the heart to a count of 6, exhaling through the heart to a count of 6 for several minutes.
Right. And then what you want to do is focus on someone, some place, or something you really appreciate. For you, it could be the guitar behind you, the story of your great guitar. It could be your wife. It could be a child. It could be your pet. It could be a place in nature, a spiritual teacher, whatever it is. You want to be imagining, appreciating that person. If you want to take it a step further, you can imagine sending them love and appreciation coming out of your heart as a beam of light. And then because when you're in a state of appreciation, some great mystics who've been studying this stuff for years have said that appreciation and love are almost the same thing. And that I think it was Meister Eckhart, who was a mystic in Germany, said, if the only prayer you ever prayed was thank you, that would be enough. And so just being in a state of gratitude, like I always focus on my wife and I just start to smile, because I'm so grateful for her. She makes me laugh before we get out of bed in the morning. My wife.
She's hilarious.
Yeah. And she says things that just blow me away. Like last night, I was really I was upsetting her in some way. We're in bed, about to fall asleep. And she says, I don't think you're going to die of coronavirus. I think you're going to die of stab wounds. It just cracked. We both laughed for about 2 minutes after she said that. Yeah. But she just constantly, anyway, I love her. So
you invoke that and create that feeling of gratitude.
Yeah. And how to know you're really in it is you'll have a smile on your face.
Yeah.
And then you can ask the question, whatever it is, how can I get my sister to take more responsibility for her life? How can I stay in touch with my kids so they feel not scared right now? How can I keep my staff from freaking out? How can I keep my business? How can I actually make more money during this crisis than less money? I talked to 3 people who are actually 30-40% above what they used to make same year over year last year. So it's possible, but you have to ask the question from a place of believing it's possible. And that's really key, is a belief that it's possible. And I teach that beliefs are just a choice. Most people look at the world and that determines what they believe. And I believe that your beliefs determine what you see in the world. There's a Jack Canfield quote that I just heard recently. He's a meditation teacher. He was studying with his Buddhist meditation in Thailand, and they were walking through a rice field, a bunch of 20-year-old students with this probably 50-year-old teacher. And the teacher looked at this large rock, none of us could have picked it up by ourselves, over in the field somewhere. And he said, is that rock heavy? And the younger people said, well, yeah, look at it. It's huge. It's heavy. And he said, only if you try to pick it up. So, we are listening to the news all day long, and only if we pick it up and keep holding it is it heavy. We've all had the experience of carrying a box that's so heavy. If we're moving into a house, it's a 15th box, our arm starts to go down, like we're going to drop the box because the tension in our arm is not strong enough to hold it anymore. And so it only is heavy if we're holding on to it. We see some negative stuff in the news, but can you watch the news from a place if it's just information, it's not directly affecting me right now? If it is, I'll pay attention to it. If not, I'll just let it be and then get back to my work, my family, my business, my spiritual practices, whatever it might be.
So you also you bring up another kind of I don't know if it's ironic twist, if that's the right way to describe it, but one of the principles that you teach, which that process just reminded me of it, is that that gratitude. In my mind, I'm remembering it as the gratitude jam session because I'm a musician, as you know. But what do you call it? It's just like it's almost like forcing yourself to express gratitude for absolutely everything that you're seeing in your environment.
It's a rampage of appreciation.
Rampage. I was close. Rampage of appreciation. And what I love about that is again, under the theme, hashtag especially now,
Right.
In a time where so many of us are focused on the lack, the experience of lack that we have, to take that even in the middle of that, to find gratitude in literally everything around us by just focusing on it and see what that does for our own frame of mind.
Yeah, I'm sitting here looking out. I do have one wall that's a window. I'm looking out at the palm trees and the oak trees swaying in the wind. I just ate a really good lunch before we got on and recorded this. I've got books all around me to read. I've got water I can drink. There's so many things in the present moment that we can appreciate. And some things we can appreciate that, we may think our kids are driving us crazy, but our kids are healthy. They're home. They're rambunctious. If they were sick, they wouldn't be driving us crazy. They'd be in bed sad and couldn't move. So the reality is that there's always things to appreciate. And one of the things that I have to always remind myself, if you're making $100,000 a year, as many of the people listening to this are, you're in the top 1/10 of 1% of earners in the world. There are people in the world right now living on $3 a day, places like India and Africa and so forth. And we get upset because we don't have cold Perrier in the refrigerator, or we can't find, we can only buy 3 rolls of bathroom at a time now because they're limited at the store, or we have to put a mask on, or we have to wipe our hands with Purell afterwards, or whatever. The reality is, thank God we have the Purell. Thank God there's stores we can go to. There are a lot of people right now that have a lot less than we do. And so we're by nature, people always want more. There's studies that show this, and that's great because it keeps evolving us toward greater creativity, greater innovation. But there's a time to stop and say, okay, do I have sufficiency in my life? Something our good friend Lynn Twist teaches. And right now, everyone listening to this, with maybe a few exceptions, have what they need to get through the next week, 2 weeks, month, whatever it might be. And, so it's like, just start focusing on what you appreciate, and then you feel better.
Yeah. That's terrific. As we start to bring this in for a landing, one of the things that I'm realizing, it gives me great hope in these days and in all days, but particularly now, as human beings, we are remarkably good at screwing things up. And the flip side of that is, as human beings, we're also remarkably good at problem solving.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to believe that in a time where we are virtually all of us, focused on the same problem, the collective we, is going to come up with a great solution. And some of those solutions will be on the macro level in terms of treatments and vaccines and all of that. But most of those solutions will be on the individual level. And you've given us such a great, not just an example, but so many examples of how we can all start to do that right now in our own way and in our own practice. So thank you for that. And how should people best connect with you? I mean, you offer so many programs, so many books. I mentioned in the intro how many books you've sold. I'm not going to rehash that. You've got a wealth of knowledge for us to tap into. What's the best way for us to do that?
Well, right now, obviously, I've got this new book out, the Success Principles Workbook. So I'd love people to go and get that. And my staff keep telling people it's just 4 cups of coffee at Starbucks. And you're not going to Starbucks right now anyway, if you're smart. So you just go online and buy the book and do the work. And if you go to the successprinciplesworkbook.com, in addition to the book, there's a number of bonuses. We've got 10 free videos leading people through some of these principles. I'm going to be doing a master class online for an hour. I'm giving away my free $35,000 keynote that I do for corporations and conferences. I charge $35,000 for. I'm going to be doing some free online processing workshops where I did this in January just as a gift before this whole thing happened. I'm going to do it again. We had 2,000 people on these calls where I led them through a process of how to identify and release the limiting beliefs that are keeping you stuck. And so normally people have to come to my live workshops to do that. So I'm going to be doing that. Also, you can download the first chapter of the book before it even gets to you from Amazon, unless you buy an audiobook or something like that. And also there are a couple of other things that are free for you there as well. And if you want to know about our other programs, just go to jackcanfield.com. We have online programs, which are perfect now. We have a Breakthrough to Success online program. I have a Train the Trainer online program. We have a your extraordinary leap program, which is our Yelp program. We have a special on that right now. It's normally a couple $100. It's $47. So we're just trying to help people with stuff they can do at home. It goes right along with the workbook. A lot of the things are in the same. So jackcanfield.com and the successprinciplesworkbook.com. If you want to buy the book that way, it'll lead you to Amazon or Barnes & Noble. And you also get the free benefits of signing up for our masterclass and other things like that.
Fantastic. And of course, we'll put all the links on the post page. And Jack, you and I have spent a lot of time over the last few years in great conversation late at night or around a fire or after dinner at our TLC, Transformational Leadership Council meetings. But I believe this is the first extended conversation we've had virtually.
Yes.
So as a sign of the times, thank you so much for that. And thank you for sharing your wisdom with our listeners. I really appreciate it, man. I love you.
I love you too. Virtual fist bump. There you go.
Thank you for listening to another episode of Love is Just Damn Good Business with Steve Farber. Join us again next time, because when customer and employee satisfaction just isn't enough anymore, we are here to back you up with specific ideas to operationalize love to make an enormous difference in your business, personal life, and the world around you. Visit our website at stevefarber.com to leave a review. And don't forget to share the love with your colleagues and friends, because after all, it's just damn good business.